Hey, what's going on people? In this video we'll be going over the best builds for all Vault Hunters in Borderlands 3. These builds are not only extremely powerful but multi-dimensional. They aim to give you as much freedom as possible and still have you dominating all in-game content. Chapters are available if you want to skip ahead to your Vault Hunter of choice. Save files are linked in the description, and let's crack into it. And we start with Moze, and if you're familiar with my mitosis Moze build, this will feel a lot like that. I've made slight adjustments to the skill trees, and I've added some optimized gear, so this is the best it can be. So where the term mitosis is the act of a cell splitting into two, this build focuses on splitting a projectile into two, and we do that through the Infernal Wish. And because it's an extra projectile, it's not just double damage, it's double everything. So extra short fuse procs, extra fire in the skag den, you name it, this shield just gives us more of it. Now the problem with this shield is its ability to burn us if we fire too much. If you're using heavy weapons, that's not going to happen too often, but I want you to be able to use whatever you want, so that's going to be a problem. But to mitigate that, this kill tree focuses on increasing our shields, and therefore hopefully allow us to survive the burn a bit longer. If you're worried about going down, there is a Bloodletter class mod that can help prevent that, but the mod I went for is the Minesweeper. This class mod is great because it's not only extremely busted, the grenades get amped up to the extreme, but also it allows us to use weapons that don't inherently deal splash damage. That's because on crit, a micro grenade spawns at the impact point, providing us with that splash damage. They deal grenade damage, scale off splash damage, and get the element of the gun that summoned them. That allows us to use weapons like the crit, which is just absolutely broken in its own right, and apply Moze's many splash damage bonuses. If you're wondering what the skill tree looks like, here it is on screen. Key skills here, or the ones that are doing the most damage, is fire in the skag den, which gets absurd amounts of mayhem scaling. We've also got big surplus for when iron covers down, redistribution and short fuse for extra ammo regen. Pull the holy pin allows the micro grenades to crit and summon more micro grenades to produce a micro grenade chain of unrelenting force. And there's also thin red line. Thin red line caps us below 50% health at 40%, allowing us to proc the URAD anointment, which, if you're not aware, applies 100% bonus radiation damage while you're below 50% health. That's us all the time. And if we're talking about an anointment that works the best in all situations, this is it. For artifacts, I went with the Snowdrift Victory Rush. This one gains bonuses to area of effect damage, mag size, and grenade damage, and that's all great rolls. It's important to note that when area of effect is in slot 2 or 3 in an artifact, it also applies that bonus to its radius. So this is potentially a problem when you're dropping micro grenades everywhere and you've got Torg cross promotion doubling their size along with that area damage radius boost. So if you do find that happening too much for your liking, you can always swap it out with another, or even go with the Pearl of Ineffable Knowledge, which isn't going to provide as much damage, but this build already provides plenty. Obviously for grenade mods I went with the Cloning Maddening Tracker, purely because of the amount of procs we get from it. And the on grenade throw anointment is the best. So when you're looking to deal damage with this build, for particularly tanky bosses, I prefer the Backburner. This thing is just monumental. The fire rate coupled with our ability to regen ammo allows us to fire it way longer than normal before we reload, and it deals enough damage to just melt Hemovorus in really the blink of an eye. Other than that, you can look for a Sandhawk for hefty damage dealing, or the Plague Bearer if you're looking to absolutely decimate any mobbing arena. Obviously the Plasma Coil is well capable of dropping bosses on its own, and it's going to flatten enemies all around the park too. The Free Radical much the same. This build just provides so many options. I don't want you to just pick the ones that I've mentioned or the ones included in the save file. There's just a massive amount of weapons that this build makes shine. Moze makes shine, it's just insane. Before we move on to the next Vault Hunter, just one note on this build. If you want the great bonuses from Big Surplus, which provides similar bonuses to that of Fire in the Skag Den, we don't want action skill cooldown rate. We want Iron Cub to be dead, and therefore we don't want topped off as a Guardian rank. So make sure you disable it. Now to Flak, and if you're familiar with my Spellcaster Flak build, this draws inspiration from that, but because that build is pretty much a meme, this build takes it a lot more seriously. Now on the surface, this build may appear limited in the amount of ways you can deal high damage, but I've made adjustments so you can defeat bosses like this, or even like this, or maybe if you feel a bit lazy, you could get your war loader bot to do it. Now I won't be going over all the ways you can deal massive damage with this build, I'll be focusing more on the peak damage option, but just know there is a lot of freedom here and I'll touch on how you can achieve that. If you're wondering, here is the skill tree, and this build essentially revolves around you holding the Guardian Angel to increase the power of our main damage dealers. Those are the Stinger and its Novas, and the Fish Slap melee grenade. Both of those are incredibly powerful, and with the Peregrine class mod, we can allow our rack to drop grenades too, which just adds to the fun. All you have to do to deal massive damage is hold the Guardian Angel in your hand, chuck out some fish slaps, chuck out your rack, and summon Novas while you do it. That might sound like a lot, but all you're doing is pressing one button to summon rack, and another to throw grenades. With an action skill start anointment on the Stinger, each time we summon our rack, which is close to every second, we will summon Novas that'll cripple whatever we touch. I've got a Stinger to cover all of the elements, and that goes for the fish slaps as well, and the best roll on a fish slap is triple link rolls. Our artifact of choice is the Radiation Stone Victory Rush, which applies 80% bonus damage to all our melee attacks. Of course we want stat rolls that boost our melee damage. We've got the anointment on the Guardian, but we also want it on our artifact and our class mod. The boost to area damage on our artifact in slot 2 or 3 is also increasing the size of the Stinger's Novas, which is exactly what we want. Other artifacts include the Unleash the Dragon for massive incendiary dot damage, and I've also got a spark plug in here. I've got a couple actually, and that's basically for the added fun of slamming. With the Come On and Slam Guardian rank, we can slam at any height. These slams do massive damage boosted by melee, and will also plant a coil thanks to the spark plug prefix. This coil can drop bosses all on its own, and because it can crit through Megavore, we can use something like the Unforgiven to increase that critical damage by over 400%. If you're rocking a spark plug in this build, I recommend grabbing a deathless one so you can limit your health to 1 and reap the benefits of URAD anointments. Your biggest enemy of this build will not be any bad guys, but barrels and the fish slap bouncing. That can be unfortunate to say the least, so there's a Plague Bearer in here to get you back up on your feet. Of course you don't need to use the fish slap, the Vindicated Gas Call is a great alternative, and you can even make it more deadly by applying terror to yourself using the Face Puncher, which increases the amount of ghosts that are summoned. Of course the Guardian Angel isn't a necessity in this build, you can also run the Psycho Stabber, and there's a couple of them in the save file too. Where this build branches out further is through the use of the War Loader bot, which can deal incredible damage. It throws your grenade, fires an incendiary shotgun, and when you've got the Faulty Star equipped, can disintegrate enemies by summoning Novas at their feet whenever it's shot at. If you're going down this route, you want to switch your action skill to Gamma Burst and equip the Red Fang class mod to boost your pet's damage. You can also boost its damage further by grabbing an on attack command anointment on your Guardian to give it bonus incendiary damage. If you did want to go back to using traditional weapons, this build does allow you to use fadeaway like normal, and there's a Monarch, Tizzy and Sandhawk in here to allow you to do just that. Just equip one of those, chuck on a Revolter and the Pearl, throw on the stack bot, and you'll be back to dealing damage like normal. To Zane now, and his undoubtedly most powerful build involves a Racer and the Hustler class mod. These two go hand in hand. It's actually kinda cute. When you're thinking about busted skills, it's hard to look past a Racer. This skill causes an extra projectile to spawn at the impact point of all your critical hits, and they double dip in splash damage. But that's not really it. If you add the Hustler class mod to the mix, you can enable your splash damage to crit, which then procs another eraser projectile, which in turn can summon another, and the cycle continues until things just get out of hand. And that's really the recipe for this build, it all boils down to that. And if you want to look at the skill tree, here it is on screen. Obviously we're going to be using eraser and we're going to be using splash damage weapons. But really, I don't want to limit you to that, so there is a Seeing Dead class mod in here, which is perfect if you actually want to see things and use weapons like the needle gun or crit, some of my personal favorites. And believe me, the crit is capable of some crazy things, almost as crazy as Eraser Zane, but for the rest of this build portion we will be focusing on that. So key items for this build, other than the class mod already mentioned, is the Infernal Wish, a shield which when it has some charge in it, adds an extra projectile to each of our shots, and will provide us with a mountain of damage. This is what you want to rock if you want to deal the most damage with this build, but there's also an action skill start Revolter in here if you want to try some non-splash damage weapons, and I encourage you to do that. For grenade mods it really doesn't matter because we're not going to be throwing many, but I like It's Piss, and I like to have one covering all of the action skill and elemental anointments. But as we'll touch on soon, you'll also want one with an on-grenade throw anointment. For artifacts, the Toboggan is going to provide us with the most damage, allowing us to slide to gain 100% amp damage on our next shot. And if you want peak damage for this build, essentially it involves you sliding around and shooting things. But that can get a little boring, so feel free to use the Pearl of Ineffable Knowledge if you're wanting to just shoot normal guns. And there is an Elemental Projector Victory Rush in here for one specific weapon. That weapon is the Complex Root. This thing fires in a 2-round burst and causes an array of explosions along its flight path and at the point of impact. These explosions get monstrously large when you've got a Hustler class mod with a splash damage roll, and then you couple that with an area of effect roll on the Elemental Projector in slot 2 or 3 to increase its radius further. If we're only dealing radiation damage and we've got the red suit equipped, we can get the 129% bonus elemental damage from the artifact, which is crazy. You don't need it though, the root deals insane amounts of damage across the whole map without it, but I just thought I'd let you know, and you can take that knowledge and apply it to other weapons. Those other weapons include basically anything you want that deals splash damage, and of course we want to be using the action skill and splash damage anointment to increase that splash damage. So weapons like the Creamer, Globetrotter, Yellow Cake, Backburner, Shocker, even the Scoville. I've one-shot bosses with that, and I've done it with the Sawbar or even the Rebound. This build just has limitless potential. What you need to be aware of though is that area of effect radius. If you've got massive area of effect radius going on, then you only want to be dealing a damage type that you can protect yourself from, or else you're just gonna blow up. So Kinetic with the Creamer, a Transformer can protect you from shock, and again the red suit protects you from radiation, but you also get that dot applied for the Elemental Projector artifact. I noticed that I haven't really covered it, but for action skills I like to run the drone generally all the time, but the barrier is going to give us more damage. Obviously we're going to rock the cannon to proc kill skills, so it'll be the cannon and drone or barrier depending on the situation. Of course it can get lonely out there, so the clone is a great option. So this is how I would alter the skill trees to incorporate him. Just do that, give him a Sandhawk, Hive or Grease Trap and you'll be ready to go. So that pretty much does it for Zane's most busted build, but I do want to share, in case you haven't seen it yet, is that the Freeman's projectile after hitting a crit is still controllable. So you can loop it round for another hit and have it detonate inside your enemies to deal monstrous damage. I just thought that's pretty cool, so consider yourself smarter. We end with Amara, and this is her most all-round damaging build, allowing you to use just about any weapon to absolutely dominate the Borderlands. It makes use of the absurd amounts of mayhem scaling applied to Ties That Bind, which has her absolutely obliterating the mobbing field. But remember, you can take advantage of it in boss fights too, as long as there's another enemy around. If you're looking for the skill tree, here it is on screen now, and essentially what we're trying to do here is buff our elemental damage, have more control over the elemental damage we're dealing, buff skills present in the Ties That Bind cycle, and reduce the time where we're not using it. A key item for all that really is the Phase Zerker class mod. which increases our max rush stacks and provides bonus weapon damage and cooldown rate per stack. At max stacks, we'll get 75% bonus weapon damage and action skill cooldown rate, allowing us to proc our shield's effects more often. That shield is obviously an action skill start revolter, providing us with 200% bonus elemental shock damage and 50% bonus fire rate for 15 seconds when we activate our action skill. We use the Pearl of Ineffable Knowledge for bonus weapon damage, which is easy to stack on Amara thanks to the ease in which she applies dots to enemies. That's also the reason why I generally run a consecutive hits anointment, but next to mags is good too for weapons you're not often reloading. And obviously if the weapon deals splash damage, I do like an action skill and splash damage anointment. Another good artifact is the Company Man, although these are difficult to farm for, and essentially we want these because of their ability to roll with area of effect damage. I wouldn't use one without it, but a god roll will eclipse the Pearl. For grenade mods, I generally like the It's Pissed for that extra bit of damage, and you'll want one to cover all of the action skill and elemental anointments. Some good weapons include the Needle Gun, Flipper, No Pew Pew, Free Radical, Light Show, or even the Torrent, which gets a lot better thanks to us speccing into heavy rain. The Hellwalker is great too, and because of its small mag size, I prefer one with the reload stack anointment. Now that's only a handful of weapons you can use in this build. You can pretty much use any. One of my personal favorites is the Tig's Boom, just because of how much it makes you feel like a god. But you can basically use just about anything. This build does not struggle mobbing, and that's thanks to Ties That Bind with that absurd amount of link damage. Now it can struggle while bossing, especially when there's no ads around, but that's when I swap out to using a phase cast 250% weapon damage anointment on a weapon made for bossing, like say the Tizzy, Sandhawk, or even the Backburner. Going into the boss fight, you want to activate phase cast twice to set yourself up, and you shouldn't have much problem from there draining that health bar. So that's it for Amara and it for the video. Let me know in the comments which build was your favorite, and I'll catch you in the next one.